Dear Denny, first question we have this week is, should Cup drivers be barred, or so not allowed, to run Xfinity or truck races when racing at a new track? So, for example, in North Wilkesboro last week.
My first answer would be no, because I think it's a good build-up, but the competitor in me says yes, because it probably is an unfair advantage, but it's not unfair if you go get a ride, but it's not everyone can go get a ride. You know, if you're Hendrick Cars, you just go get a truck or go get a car and field it because you think it's going to make your team better, but not everyone has those resources to be able to just, oh, you want to run trucks this weekend? No problem. I'll make that happen. Like that's a good perk to have for sure. So I think, it's tough to say. Like Chicago, holy cow. I mean, is Cup the only thing running Chicago?
I think we have Xfinity there too, right, Travis? Fact checker?
He'll get back to us on that. But I would say, let's just say Chicago, right? Oh my gosh, it would be a huge advantage to be running another series on a track that we've never seen. And I heard that it's so tight, like it's blind corners a little bit. Yeah, it would be a huge advantage. So
Xfinity's there too at Chicago.
They are.
Yeah.
I love that we have Travis with a mic. Now pull that up, Jamie. Pull that up for me, Jamie. Travis.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, we're never going to change the rule, but yeah, it would certainly, whoever runs Xfinity is probably going to be top of the charts when it comes to Cup practice.
Yeah, I think is running those races that beneficial? Because you're going to run the track in the sim, right? So how much more beneficial is it running it in a different car in real life than it is in a sim?
A lot. Yeah. It's just the visual. I mean, even though your braking markers might be different, it's just the visual. And certainly when you run a Cup, an Xfinity or a truck race, there's just little things in the racetrack that you learn. Like this line, you don't want to run here, or you do want to run there, or the bottom was super dominant, so make sure you don't get off the bottom. Like there's just, like at North Wilkesboro, there's little patches that until I ran and got a bunch of reps on the racetrack, like I didn't know that, oh, it's way faster if you do it this way. And I'm sure after a bazillion laps of running, Kyle Larson knew every in and out. He it proved out because he was the first one to run the apron in turns 3 and 4 coming off turn 4. He was the first one in the Cup race to drive all the way down to the concrete. Well, because he was we were thinking, man, I don't know, our cars, it's got diffusers, so I don't know if you put a big air gap under there, does it make it worse? I mean, he knew right away, well, I'm going to do that because I've got repetitions doing it. So I think that it is an advantage. Is it really unfair? No, probably not. But yeah, I would say that it'd be cool if we all just stayed in the Cup Series. But again, that's not what sells tickets, and that matters.
What do you and other drivers do during delays, lightning delays, rain delays, whatever kind of delay it may be?
It was interesting this week because we'd only run one green flag lap. So there was not a whole lot to talk about with the team. You try to just, look around and figure out, well, let me see the restart. Let me see how it went. I felt pretty good about my car at the time because it was hotter. My car was like, oh, I think I'm going to be pretty good here. And then as soon as it cooled off and everybody was able to run so much gas, it was like, just level out the playing field. But what I usually do is it usually happens after a certain amount of time in the race. I'll just go back and I'll watch SMT like every other driver will, and I'll just kind of figure out what I need to do better as a driver and what I need more out of my car to do the things that I think I need to do. So I'll do that. But then this week it was not much. I was watching the end of the golf tournament, watching IndyCar, and that was it.
What about the situations where you can't get out of the car? You're staying in the car.
Well, I said on the radio during the red flag, because they were like, we're not sure if it's an actual 30-minute hold or are we just sitting here for the lightning. I said, man, at my age, it's easier just to sit in here and roast than it is to get in and out of the car. Like, especially as kind of sore as I've been, like I'd rather just sit in there and bake versus getting in and out. And but when they said, well, it's going to be 30 minutes, I'm like, all right, I guess I'll do it. Like back in the day when we used to test all the time, I'd be the guy that I'll sit in there for 8 hours. I mean, I didn't like get in and out of the car. I'll just sit in there, take little naps in between changes and stuff, which, gosh, I'm glad we don't have those days now.
You ever worried you wouldn't wake up? Like you miss your alarm? Someone have to wake you up?
While I'm in the car?
Yeah.
No, because they drop the jack, and next thing you know, like, hey, it's time to go.
Okay.
But it's interesting. I would go from like napping. I mean, I fall asleep in the middle of a test, and they drop the jack, and they're like, they're all right, let's go. And I'm like, I wake up, and next thing you know, I'm going in the corner 160, and I'm like, all right, let's go. And it's just we can turn it on that quick.
Moving on to Dear Denny, put out this question on your Instagram. So people listening to the show, always remember you can tweet at Denny or Dirty Mo with hashtag Dear Denny, or just reply to some of those Instagram stories I put up every once in a while. First question is, you once talked about how frustrating it is to watch a teammate have success while you struggle. Has the weekly success of Christopher Bell, the current points leader, early this season frustrated you at all?
No, because I think that we've ran as good as Christopher Bell. We just haven't finished as good as Christopher Bell. But it is I've been in that position, absolutely, where, Kyle Busch, when he first came in, Matt Kenseth, probably in 2013. I've had plenty of years where my, guys in the same equipment as me are outperforming me week in, week out. And absolutely, it is frustrating. I mean, it's one thing when your whole organization is running in the teens, and that's kind of, well, you can kind of draw a conclusion. That's all of our cars are capable of. But when you've got one that is, out front or capable of winning, and you've got the rest of them in the teens, then, yeah, it becomes like, what am I doing wrong, for sure? I mean, I definitely doubted myself in 2018 when it seems like I could qualify well, but as soon as they dropped the green, I couldn't get to 12th place fast enough. And, things changed in 2019, and we've been as fast, if not faster than anybody from that point on. And, at least we got as many wins as anyone at that point. Larson might have one more than me now in this last 4-year stretch, but I think it's close.
Interesting. Well, I feel like you got to only give him credit for 3 years, right? Since he was out one.
Yep.
So, how does someone, in your opinion, go about getting a start their career in the sport? And not necessarily as a driver, but in the business world of the sport.
I think if you want to be part of a NASCAR team, now is the time. It's the easiest entry point ever in history is right now. I think that certainly, if you're passionate about the sport, I would say go to your local short track and volunteer to be on someone's team at the local short track. So a late model team or whatever team, and just say, what do you need me to do? And continue to work up the ladder. If you look at a lot of the team members or pit crew members, spotters, these are guys that I saw Alex Yantz, that was the crew chief for the 10 car in Xfinity. I'm like, really? I raced late models with him. Frank Denny Jr., who's a spotter, like Drew Herring is a spotter for Truex. Like, I raced against all these guys. Like, you stay in the sport and you work your way up and you get experience. And I know at 2311, it's, you submit your resume and we'll go through it. And we've been giving people with maybe even less experience than what we're comfortable with at times jobs, because we feel like we can train them and lead them to have the skill set that they can have for the long term. But I would just go and volunteer at a local short track and then take those credentials and apply for then a truck team. It's not going to be your front-running truck team. They're not going to take a risk on an unknown guy, but you stay in the sport, you help out. Sometimes you're going to have to volunteer, and it'll pay off in the long run. I definitely think the entry point's easier to come in and work for a top-tier team now than ever.
And that goes for all positions across the board, not just marketing, the office things as well.
Yeah, sure. I think that, kind of the carpet walkers, as I like to call them, the people that don't really go into the race shop, but they do sponsorship and marketing and hospitality and stuff. You don't have to necessarily be in the sport to have an entry point for that. But as far as mechanics on a race car, if you want to do it, you can do it. You can come in right now.
Chase Briscoe raced with a broken finger. How painful, difficult is it to drive with a broken finger or injured hand?
So I did have an injured hand. So I have a scar right here from I nearly ripped my pinky off. This was my rookie season, and we were racing around the hauler. We had a Charlotte Motor Speedway test, and we were racing to see how fast we could run around the hauler, the trailer, and the rig. And the record was like, I don't know, 12 seconds or 15 seconds, something like that. Well, the front bumpers on these rigs, the truckers, they have like these huge stainless steel front bumpers. It's, kind of for show, makes it look really good. Well, I grabbed it to try to pull myself around the hauler, and it literally just shredded my pinky here, and it was hanging down. And so I had to get this bandaged up, and I remember running, I think it was the Richmond Cup race where I had this big bandage on and had to run it, and it was painful. I didn't have to have surgery or anything, but they certainly stitched it up quite a bit. But yeah, I imagine if he has to have surgery on his finger, it probably hurts, no doubt. So it's good driving, racing injured there.
If NASCAR had changed its revenue sharing model earlier, would the cost cuts purposes of the next gen car have been necessary?
Well, I think it just depends on what part we're really speaking about. If NASCAR had changed the revenue sharing model, why would they share revenue earlier?
Well,
think they're just going to open up their pockets and say, here's a couple bucks?
If you and Curtis Polk had decided to start it and Michael Jordan had started
Hey, this ain't
years ago.
Whoa. This is a misconception. This is not about Denny Hamlin and Curtis Polk rallying the troops of the teams and finally going after money for NASCAR. Teams have been going in and out of business for decades. We've had a championship team in Furniture Row go out of business the next year. This has been a problem for decades. What I think Curtis and his expertise, Brent coming from another sport, is basically saying, well, why do we not have our costs covered, right? All other sports, your cost is covered through media revenue, and then you create other revenue through sponsorship or whatever, right? But they know before they even hit the court or hit the field that the media rights revenue covers whatever it costs to go compete. So then they did some big analysis over what does it cost us to compete at a high level in NASCAR. And once we presented that number to NASCAR, here's what it costs if you're a single car team to run 15th. Here's what it costs. They immediately started saying, all right, well, how can we cut that down? So versus, all right, well, let us help you get to that number to cover your costs. Then they started saying, well, how can we cut that number down for you guys? We'll help you guys. And since we're going to help you spend the money you have versus giving what we deemed a fair share. So they were not going to give us anything that was not part of an agreement. But which is why these talks are so important right now, and that we get it right, because we can't have these talks again for another 10 years. So we have to make sure it's right, and we secure the team's health for at least the next decade.
So I guess the better question here is that if the relationship between the teams and the revenue sharing model was healthier years ago, would there have been such a focus on cutting costs now in the present?
Maybe. But the difference is, too, is sponsorship's a lot different than it used to be as well. I mean, I think that we talked about it previous episodes, but there's a lot more opportunities for people to spend money in sports than there ever has been. I mean, there's like 3,500 options in how you can spend your marketing dollars in sports. It used to be that, there weren't jersey patches being sold on NBA teams. They used to not name every arena. There's just a lot of different ways. And so we're fighting with other leagues to get the sponsorship, right? And so, there at one time there was a whole lot of Fortune 500 companies, right? That's kind of what we boasted. Hundreds and hundreds of Fortune 500 companies. Now that number has gone down, or the level of participation in which they have in our sport is down. So who does that directly hurt? That hurts us, the race teams who depend on it. So we're now at a point where what we bring in sponsorship doesn't, and what we get from NASCAR doesn't cover our cost. Both of them combined don't cover our costs. So we have to get revenue or else go out of business.
Did you tell Brad to lock the porta potty next time?
Yeah, that was just a bad move on his part. I'm not going to talk about what I saw, but it was very interesting to see him with his helmet on in fire suit. Yeah, he was in a rush. I felt the same thing he did, by the way. I had to use the bathroom really, really bad. I had to pee extremely bad. And so for the first time, I really don't use the bathroom that much before I know that I need to pee before the race because I know as much fluids as I'm going to take in throughout the race, it gives me a stomach ache at the end because I'm holding it in. And I tried to let it go at Atlanta. Now I've never peed or done anything in my suit in my 18-year career. Never. Hand to God on that. Never done it. But I was so uncomfortable at the end of Atlanta that I wanted to let it go. And I tried to relax. I'm like, just let it go. And I couldn't do it. The stage fright or whatever it was, just not wanting to make a mess in my suit and then in my seat. I'm just like, I can't do it. There's only one more caution, hopefully, and we're going to get this thing over. So I jumped out of the car, and Brad must have hauled ass to the car because he beat me to the John. And listen, it's not my job to knock on the door. It's up to him. He has
a green handle.
You see a green handle, you pull it.
Yep.
Do you knock on? Have you ever knocked on?
Never.
No.
That's what the green red's for.
That's right. So definitely a rookie move by Brad.
Shout out to the cameraman for capturing that content.
Shout out. Was it kind of weird though? Why did he follow him?
Well, I guess he probably could have thought that maybe he was going to approach another driver or something.
Yeah. But I mean, keeping the camera on him for the entire time he was in the John.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. A little weird.